It was one of those days where the weight of the world felt like it was crashing down on her. Sarah stared at her reflection in the mirror, her heart racing as if it could burst from her chest. The storm brewing outside mirrored the turmoil inside her, dark clouds swirling ominously, threatening to unleash their angst upon the world. Why is everything so complicated? She thought, her fingers trembling slightly against the cool glass. With a heavy sigh, she turned away, determined to shake off the feeling that clung to her like a shadow. She shuffled into the cozy living room of her small apartment, where the familiar sight of her beloved golden retriever, Jake, brought a glimmer of comfort. He was sprawled out on the floor, radiating tranquility as if he could absorb all the chaos around them. "Hey, buddy," she said softly, scratching behind his ears. He lifted his head, his big brown eyes sparkling with unconditional love, and she couldn't help but smile. Jake had a way of making even the darkest days feel a little less unbearable. Just as she settled onto the couch, wrapping herself in a worn blanket, a loud knock echoed through the room, startling both her and Jake. Her heart skipped a beat, a jolt of anxiety coursing through her. Who could that be? She glanced at Jake, whose ears perked up in curiosity. "Stay here, okay?" she whispered as she approached the door, her mind racing with possibilities. Opening it cautiously, she found a delivery person standing there, holding a large cardboard box. "Delivery for Sarah," he said with a nonchalant shrug. I didn't order anything," she replied, baffled. The delivery person merely shrugged, placing the box at her feet. Signatures on the label. "Have a good day." Left with the mystery of the box, Sarah stared at it, her heart pounding. What could possibly be inside? She knelt down, looking at Jake, who sniffed it inquisitively. "Should we open it?" she asked. His eager tail thumped against the floor, and she felt a surge of excitement wash over her. Tearing through the tape, she felt a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. What awaited her inside? As she flipped open the flaps, colorful toys tumbled out, along with a few bags of treats. A handwritten note nestled in the corner caught her attention. "For the best dog in the world. Love, Aunt Clara." She burst into laughter, the weight of her earlier thoughts momentarily forgotten. "Looks like your Aunt Clara has spoiled you again, Jake." He jumped up, his eyes wide with excitement, as she pulled out a squeaky toy that was shaped like a giant bone. The storm outside rumbling in the background couldn't dampen their spirits as they tossed the toy back and forth. Jake pounced, his enthusiasm infectious. They played until both were panting, the apartment buzzing with joy. Just as they settled down again, exhaustion licking at their limbs, Sarah caught herself staring out of the window, the storm now rolling fiercely outside. It was strange how quickly life could shift from the chaotic suck of anxiety into a moment of pure joy, and back again. As she cradled Jake against her chest, leaning back into the couch, a wave of sorrow threatened to wash over her. "What's wrong with me?" she wondered, tears welling in her eyes. "Why can't I just be happy?" But Jake nudged her hand, as if sensing her emotional turmoil, his warmth anchoring her in the present. His innate goodness reassured her that maybe it was okay to feel overwhelmed, that she wasn't alone in this battleground of emotions. "You're right, boy. I've got you," she whispered, her voice catching in her throat. Just then, another loud clap of thunder echoed outside, jolting her back to reality. Startled, she jumped and Jake barked, instinctively getting up from her lap and standing protectively in front of her. "It's just thunder, Jake. Nothing to be scared of," she said, but even her words felt hollow against the backdrop of the raging storm. In an impulse of comfort-seeking, she grabbed Jake's leash and clipped it onto his collar. "Let's go for a walk," she said firmly, hoping that perhaps fresh air could ease the tension curling in her chest. He seemed to sense her urgency, eagerly bouncing towards the door. They ventured outside, the rain adding a soothing texture to the chaotic atmosphere. The world felt muted, with the storm creating a bizarre cocoon around them. With each step, she could feel the rhythm of her heartbeat steadying, the patter of rain transforming her anxiety into something more manageable. As they walked down the familiar path, Sarah lost herself in thought, contemplating her life choices, her work challenges, and the loneliness that sometimes suffocated her. With Jake by her side, however, The heavy clouds of despair lightened, replaced by gratitude for his steadfast companionship. Moments passed, and as they turned a corner, a flash of movement caught her eye. An orange tabby cat darted across the street, catching Jake's attention. He lunged forward, barking excitedly, but she yanked on the leash, keeping him close. "Not today, Jake," she scolded, though she couldn't suppress a smile at his typical exuberance. The simple joy he found in the cat's presence was a reminder that life's little pleasures still existed, no matter how stormy the weather. As they rounded back towards home, the rain began to taper off. She felt a sense of achievement wash over her, as if she had conquered a small mountain. With Jake trotting happily beside her, she muttered, "See, we did it together." Stepping back inside, refreshed and soaked yet invigorated, she took a moment to place her hand on her heart, feeling the gentle thrum of life within her. "Life might be a whirlwind," she whispered, kneeling to Jake's level, "but we can take it one day at a time." Jake wagged his tail in agreement, and as they curled up on the sofa, the storm outside settled into a soft drizzle. In this moment, surrounded by the remnants of joy and the fading echoes of chaos, Sarah felt a sense of calm envelop her like the warm blanket draped over them. The uncertainty was still there, lurking at the edges, but for now, it was manageable. Their day would not end in darkness. Instead, it held promise for tomorrow. "We got through today, Jake," she murmured as sleep began to take her, "and we'll face whatever comes next together." As Jake rested his head on her lap, she felt a wave of peace wash over her. It wasn't just about surviving the storm. It was about finding a way to dance in the rain, hand in paw with her faithful companion by her side. Chapter 1 ends, a day in the park. The sun peeked through the remnants of the storm the next day, casting a golden light that danced across the living room. Sarah awoke to find Jake sitting expectantly by her bed, his big brown eyes filled with an eager energy that seemed to infuse the entire room. All right. I'm up," she chuckled, the heaviness from the previous day lifting just a little. After a quick breakfast and a few playful moments with Jake, she decided it was high time they ventured out into the world beyond their cozy apartment. The local park was a short walk away, and it was the perfect place for both of them to shake off the remnants of yesterday's anxiety. "Let's make today an adventure, Jake," she declared, clipping his leash onto his collar with exaggerated enthusiasm. Jake yipped excitedly, bouncing on his paws as they stepped outside. The air was crisp with the scent of wet earth, the remnants of rain still clinging to the grass and foliage. As they walked toward the park, the sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating a mosaic of light and shadow on the path ahead. Upon arriving at the park, Sarah paused to take in the beauty surrounding her. Children were laughing, couples were strolling hand in hand, and dogs romped freely in a nearby fenced area. Just then, a small voice called out, "Can I pet your dog?" Startled, Sarah turned to see a little girl no older than 6, her curly hair bouncing with enthusiasm. "Of course," she said, kneeling down to Jake's level. "This is Jake. He loves making new friends." The girl reached out tentatively, and Jake, already sensing her joy, gave her an enthusiastic lick. Laughter erupted, and the girl's face lit up in delight. "He's so soft," she squealed, her small hands running through his silky fur. Sarah smiled, watching the interaction warm her heart. Moments like these reminded her of the innocence in life, a stark contrast to the complex emotions she often tangled with. But as they continued their walk, a sudden chill whispered through the air, causing a shiver to run down Sarah's spine. She brushed it off, blaming it on the remnants of the cold, but couldn't shake off the hint of unease curling in her chest. Jake led the way, clearly reveling in the scents of the park. Their footsteps crunched on fallen leaves, creating a rhythmic soundtrack to their adventure. The park stretched before them like an open book of possibility. But Sarah felt a shadow lurking at the edge of her contentment. As they rounded a bend, they encountered a gathering of dogs near a pond, and Jake's excitement overtook him. He tugged at the leash, barking joyfully as he rushed towards them. Sarah couldn't help but let out a laugh, the sight of him bounding away momentarily distracting her from her unease. "Okay, go have fun," she called, watching Jake dash off to join the playful chaos. Her heart swelled with joy as she observed the way he connected with the other dog-saw flurry of tails and happy barks. But that fleeting moment of joy was soon overshadowed by a strange feeling that something wasn't right. In the midst of all the laughter, she felt a gaze upon her, intense and heavy. Turning to look, Sarah's eyes locked with a stranger standing a few yards away, leaning against a tree, arms folded. The figure was dressed in a dark jacket, the hood pulled low over their face, obscuring any defining features. An unsettling feeling bubbled in her stomach, and she couldn't help but glance back to ensure Jake was still within sight. "Focus, Sarah. It's just your imagination," she reminded herself, trying to shake off the dread that clung to her thoughts. After a few moments, the stranger shifted, and a glint of something metallic caught her eye. Was it a cell phone, a knife? The thought startled her, and she shook her head, dismissing the impulse. It was just a person at the park, after all. But Jake's joyful barks broke her train of thought, pulling her back to the present. He was playing with a young Labrador, his happiness infectious. As she watched them, her heart filled again. Jake was her safe haven, reminding her of the joy still present in the world. A sudden shriek from the other side of the pond sent a wave of panic through her. "Mom, help!" a boy cried, pointing frantically at the water. Sarah turned just in time to see a small golden retriever struggling in the pond, splashing wildly. The owner, a frantic woman, was running toward the water's edge, but the dog was clearly in distress. Without thinking, Sarah rushed over, her heartbeat thundering in her chest. "Stay back, I'll get him!" she shouted as she sprinted past. Jake, sensing the urgency, followed closely at her side. "Come on, Jake. We need to help," she said, adrenaline pumping through her veins. The water splashed around her ankles as she waded into the pond, the cold water shocking her system. She reached for the frantic dog, who was now desperately barking, its eyes wide with fear. With a firm grip, Sarah managed to catch the dog's collar and pulled it toward her. "I've got you, buddy," she exclaimed, using all her strength to guide the terrified animal back to the shore. Behind her, she could hear the woman screaming words of encouragement. "You can do it!" Finally, with a last heave, she dragged the dog to safety. Gasping for air, she looked up to see the grateful woman kneeling beside her. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Tears streamed down the woman's face as she hugged the dripping dog tightly. "I thought I was going to lose him." "We did it together," Sarah replied, panting heavily. Just then, she felt a nuzzle against her side. Jake had come to check on her, his big eyes full of concern. The park seemed to fade into the background. Her heart swelled with camaraderie and shared relief as the woman continued to thank her profusely. But amidst the joy, Sarah felt a sudden shiver run down her spine. The dark figure she had seen earlier was now watching them from a distance, motionless. I should probably get back to my dog," Sarah said slowly, glancing back at Jake. Something about that gaze unsettled her, and she felt a compulsion to leave the scene. "Of course," the woman said, still flustered. "And thank you again. You're a hero." With a quick wave, Sarah turned, leading Jake back toward the park's exit, her heart racing for reasons she couldn't articulate. The tension in her chest tightened with each step away from the pond, the mystery of the stranger lingering in her mind. As they made their way home, the sunshine overhead felt harsh, the beauty of the park seeming to mock her unease. Jake, blissfully unaware of her turmoil, trotted beside her, occasionally looking up with a wagging tail. Once back in the safety of their apartment, Sarah let out a deep breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Jake plopped down at her feet, a satisfied sigh escaping him. "What a day, huh?" She ruffled his fur, forcing a smile, but her mind was still preoccupied. Who was that person watching? Why did their presence bother her so much? As dusk settled outside the window, shadows danced across the room, and Sarah resolved to shake off the feeling that had lingered since the encounter. Sinking onto the couch, she flipped on the television, trying to drown out the anxious thoughts swirling in her mind. But her heart hung heavy with unanswered questions. The world outside had felt chaotic, unpredictable. Jake curled up beside her, resting his head on her lap as if sensing her distress. As she absent-mindedly stroked his fur, she whispered, "I just want to feel safe again." But deep down, She knew that emotions were complex beasts, and safety often felt like a fragile illusion. Perhaps tomorrow would be different. Maybe she'd feel lighter, free from the shades of worry that clouded her thoughts. As she gazed into the deepening night, she felt Jake's warmth ground her, reminding her that even amid uncertainty, she wasn't truly alone. The shadows flickered ominously against the walls, each one a whisper of doubt, but as she held Jake close, she felt a glimmer of hope fighting against the darkness. There was something about the bond they shared a tether that reminded her no storm would ever be too great to weather alone. Chapter 2. Ends Stormy Nights. The following days passed by in a blur, each one filled with a peculiar mix of joy and unease. Jake's antics kept Sarah laughing, yet often her mind drifted back to the unsettling encounter in the park. It gnawed at her, a tiny splinter of anxiety that she couldn't quite shake. She wished she could forget about that stranger. But the uncomfortable sensation of being watched lingered like a dark cloud, hanging over her even during her brightest moments. Then, one evening, dark clouds rolled in from nowhere, casting a shadow over her thoughts. Sarah peered out the window as the wind picked up, rustling the leaves of nearby trees. It felt ominously familiar, and she instinctively hugged Jake close, his warm body grounding her. "Looks like we're in for a storm, buddy," she murmured, watching the heavy clouds gather. As the first drops of rain tapped against the window, Sarah settled onto the couch with a steaming cup of tea, hoping to find solace in the warmth. But the air thickened with anticipation as thunder rumbled in the distance, sending a shiver down her spine. Jake, ever the perceptive companion, trotted over to her, whimpering softly as he nuzzled his nose against her leg. "It's okay, Jake, I'll keep you safe." She stroked his fur, the rhythm of his breathing calming the storm inside her. The patter of rain intensified, a percussion against the roof that mimicked her racing heart. Wrapped in her blanket, Sarah tried to concentrate on the television. But each rumble of thunder sent her mind tumbling back to the park, the stranger, the eyes that watched her. "Get a grip, Sarah," she muttered to herself as the wind howled outside. "You've dealt with storms before." With a firm shake of her head, she tried to focus on the screen, but her gaze was drawn outside again. Suddenly, a flash of lightning illuminated the room, and she caught a glimpse of something, a shadow darting past her living room window. Heart racing, she shot up, her heart thumping uncontrollably. "Jake, stay here," she whispered, grabbing her phone in case she needed to call for help. Stepping cautiously towards the window, she peered through the rain-soaked glass. But all she saw was the relentless downpour and flickering streetlights illuminating nothing out of the ordinary. Was it just her imagination? With shaking hands, she returned to the couch, where Jake had remained, his head cocked, eyes wide and watchful. "I must be losing it," she chuckled nervously, ruffling his fur to reassure both him and herself. But the tension didn't dissipate. As moments passed, the storm grew stronger, pounding against the walls as if it sought to break through. Each clap of thunder echoed in her chest, intensifying her unease. Another flash of lightning illuminated the room, and she swore she saw a figure standing on her balcony, just for a brief moment before the darkness returned. Heart pounding, she jumped to her feet, feeling the panic rise in her throat. "Jake!" she called, looking down at her faithful companion, who was now on high alert. With her steady breath escaping her, Sarah tiptoed to the balcony door, heart racing. "Just the storm, just the storm," she whispered to herself, though it was hard to convince herself of that. She gripped the doorknob, hesitating, a wave of dread washing over her. What if someone was out there, or what if it was nothing at all, just her vivid imagination playing tricks? But she had to know. Screw it. She pushed the door open, rain immediately pelting down onto her skin. The gusts of wind whipped against her, a fierce reminder of nature's fury. Jake whimpered as he stayed at her side, ready for anything. "Just a quick look," she told him, scanning the darkened corners of her balcony, the shadows flickering wildly. But there was nothing. The empty space met her gaze, void of any figure. The wind howled, almost taunting her as she stood there, heart racing. Just as she was about to step back inside, a faint sound reached her ears, muffled footsteps on the wet ground below. Turning her gaze down to the street, Sarah squinted into the rain, trying to make out the source. And then she saw it. A figure, cloaked in shadows, standing just beyond the reach of the streetlight. The way they swayed slightly made her stomach drop. It felt like they were purposefully waiting. Her breath caught in her throat, and adrenaline surged through her veins. "Jake, we need to go back inside now," she said, her voice trembling. Jake pressed against her, sensing her fear. As she moved to shut the door, she couldn't shake the feeling that the stranger was watching her, waiting. Just as she lifted her hand to pull the door closed, the figure took a step forward, stepping into the light for just a brief instant. Sarah's breath hitched as she recognized the outline of a dark jacket and hood familiar yet chilling. It was the same figure from the park. Panicking, she slammed the door shut and bolted the lock, her heart racing. "What do they want?" she whispered, her mind racing with thoughts of the previous days. Gripping her phone tightly, she debated calling the police but thought better of it. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Perhaps her imagination was spiraling out of control. Jake let out a low growl, sensing her distress. "It's okay, boy. I'm sorry for dragging you into this," she whispered, kneeling beside him as she tried to calm her racing heart. The storm continued to pound outside, the rain hammering against the walls like a relentless drum. Time ticked by at a painfully slow pace. Every creak of the building echoed ominously in her ears. With each passing minute, the world outside faded behind the fury of the storm, leaving her cocooned in a feeling of dread. After what felt like an eternity, the rain finally began to lighten. Sarah held her breath, listening intently, praying that the figure had gone, that it was all a figment of her imagination. With Jake by her side, she resolved to check, to ensure her instincts were not leading her astray. Slowly, she unbolted the door and peered outside. The rain had transformed into a gentle drizzle, and in the dim glow of the streetlights, she saw nothing amiss. But a tingling sensation crept down her spine. Turning her head slightly, she noticed a shadow lurking at the edge of her yard, concealed by the thick dark of the night. "No, no, no," she muttered, pulling the door shut and bolting it again. She stepped back, panic gripping her throat. The last thing she wanted was to put herself in danger, to invite whatever this was closer. Jake stood beside her, his loyal presence grounding her. She could feel his warmth. He was her lifeline in this chaotic darkness. "I won't let anything happen to you," she vowed, kneeling beside him. But as they sat in silence, their breathing the only sound in the room, a loud bang echoed from the direction of the balcony. Someone had slammed against the door. Frozen in fear, she and Jake shared a glance. In that moment, it was clear. They were in this together. "Okay, deep breath," she whispered to herself, trying to quell the rising tide of panic. Her phone buzzed, sending another jolt through her. It was a text from her friend, checking in on her. "Hey, just wanted to see how you're doing. Everything okay?" It was a lifeline, someone who cared, someone who could help. Her fingers poised over the screen, preparing to reach out for support. Just as she was about to respond, another loud bang resonated, this time more vigorous, followed by frantic knocks. Her heart raced again. It was no longer just a storm outside. The impending danger bore down on her. The shadow lurking just beyond the threshold was real. "Stay here, Jake," she commanded softly, inching toward the source of the noise, gripping her phone like a weapon. Another knock, this one louder and more determined, rattled the door. In that instant, a primal instinct kicked in. She needed to protect herself and Jake at all costs. "Who's there?" she shouted, her voice shaking but firm, desperate to assert control over a situation spiraling into chaos. No response came, only more banging accompanied by muffled voices. Panic clawed at her throat as she stood frozen, weighing her options as the uncanny awareness of someone being there, just outside her door, made her blood run cold. As the storm outside raged on, Sarah's world spun between fear and the instinct to protect her only companion. In that moment, she vowed that she would do whatever it took to keep the two of them safe. The sense of control they cherished was slipping away into shadows, but she wouldn't allow fear to hold them captive. They would face this storm together. Chapter 3 ends when hardships hit. The thunder rumbled ominously outside, its deep growl echoing in sync with Sarah's racing heart. Jake stood protectively beside her, his body tense and alert. The unknown presence outside her door grew more intimidating with every ferocious knock, pulling Sarah deeper into a pit of fear. "Stay behind me, Jake," she whispered, feeling the weight of uncertainty heavy upon her shoulders. The muffled voices continued, their intentions unreadable, sending another jolt of adrenaline coursing through her veins. She could feel her instincts urging her to take action, and she clutched her phone tighter, ready to call for help if needed. "Who's there?" she shouted again, forcing her voice to steady, even though her hands trembled. "If you don't leave, I'm calling the police." At that moment, the knocking ceased abruptly, and there was a chilling silence. Confusion swirled in the air, thickening with tension. Had they left? Or were they waiting for her next move? The silence only amplified her fear, allowing her imagination to spiral. What if they were just waiting for her to let her guard down? She felt a flicker of courage ignite in her chest. "I'm not afraid of you," she challenged, though her voice wavered slightly. Still, the silence persisted, stretching on until every second felt like an eternity. Had she imagined the danger? Just when she thought it was over, the door rattled violently, as if someone were trying to push through. Sarah recoiled instinctively, her heart racing once more. "Go away!" she cried, panic rising. "I'm calling for help." But the only response was a low chuckle, one that sent chills down her spine. It was taunting, almost sinister. She glanced down at Jake, whose fur bristled in alarm, his growl deepening into an urgent warning. In a sudden burst of courage, Sarah lunged for the light switch, illuminating the room. The familiar brightness did little to ease the tension, but it gave her a sliver of confidence. With a deep breath, she steeled herself and grabbed her phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. 911, what's your emergency?" The operator's calm voice rang through. "There's someone at my door. They're trying to get in." "I'm scared." Sarah rushed out, her heart hammering wildly in her chest. "Stay calm. Can you tell me your address?" As she relayed the information, something in her spirit shook. Desperate for reassurance, all she could think of was keeping Jake safe. The weight of her solitude fell heavily around her. In that moment, all she wanted was someone to stand with her, to feel less alone in the darkness. But then, the banging resumed, more violent than before. "Open the door!" a voice barked, this time harsher and more insistent. "We know you're in there. Let us in. We just want to talk." Panic surged anew, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "I can't, please hurry," she implored the operator, who reassured her that help was on the way. "Make sure all doors and windows are locked and stay away from the entry points," the operator instructed. "Yes," she thought, the clarity snapping her into action. Sarah darted to the other rooms, checking windows in a frenzy. She secured everything, not knowing what they wanted, but sure that letting them in would be a disastrous mistake. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again, a text. "Hey, is everything okay? I saw the storm and thought of you." It read a message from her friend Emily. In that moment, it was a glimmer of light piercing through her darkness. "I'm in trouble." "Someone's outside!" she typed back frantically. And just as she hit send, another crash jolted her back to the present. A loud thud reverberated, and she turned, realizing it had come from the back door. They were trying to find another way in. "Jake, we need to move," she said, thrusting herself into survival mode. With a swift glance around the small apartment, Sarah knew she had to get Jake to safety, and her heart raced at the implications. The bedroom. It had a window that opened to the fire escape. That would give them a chance. "Come on, Jake, we have to go," she hissed as the wind howled outside, mingling with the fear that echoed in the room. She grabbed his leash and hurried to the bedroom, her mind racing as they sprinted through the small hall. "Please, please let it be safe," she whispered. Reaching the window, she flung it open, rain pouring in the sudden gust of wind. Jake's fur was soaked as he pressed against her, and it made her heart ache. "It's okay, boy. We're going to get out of here." Just as she leaned out to assess their escape, a loud crash echoed behind her. The front door had finally given way. The unmistakable sound of footsteps through her apartment. Footsteps that sent a chill racing down her spine. "Sarah." A voice boomed and she froze, her blood running cold. It was too familiar, the same voice she had heard during those frantic knocks. "We just want to talk." "No, stay away," she shouted back, her voice fierce despite the terror curling in her gut. A flash of movement caught her eye, and before she could think, She lunged for Jake, pulling him up and out onto the fire escape. "Come on," she urged as they scrambled outside, rain hitting her with a chilling intensity. The fire escape creaked under their weight as they carefully descended, flashbacks of childhood adventures washing over her, mixed with the reality of the peril they faced. Her heart was racing, the adrenaline surging through her, propelling her downward despite the chaos above. Almost there, she coached herself, guided by the instinct to protect Jake at all costs. Just as they reached the final landing, a voice echoed from above, startling her. "Don't let her escape. She's right there." Panic spiraled as she glanced back, seeing dark figures emerging from the apartment, silhouetted against the glow of the lights inside. "Time was running out. Go, go!" she urged Jake, pushing him forward as they rounded the corner of the building. Raindrops soaked her clothes, the cold seeping into her skin. But survival instinct kicked in hard. She had to keep moving. When they reached the alley bordering her building, she glanced back, spotting the figures now racing down the fire escape. She didn't know who they were, what they wanted, or how they'd found her, but she couldn't dwell on that now. They were gaining on her. "Let's go, Jake," she urged, sprinting ahead, dodging through the rain-soaked alley. The main street loomed in front of them, the bright convenience store lights beckoning like a beacon of hope. In a burst of adrenaline, she sprinted toward it, the sounds of her pursuers fading behind her. She was almost there when a hand reached out from the shadows, grabbing her shoulder. "Sarah." It was a voice she recognized. Emily. Relief flooded her body as she spun around, ready to pull her friend into the safety of the store. But before she could take a breath, another shadow loomed. "Let her go," Emily shouted, stepping in front of Sarah as if to shield her. The figures from earlier emerged, the dark shapes becoming clearer in the flickering light, revealing their intent. "We're not here to hurt her. We just need to talk," one of them yelled, desperation in their voice. But fear coursed through Sarah, and she couldn't trust them. "Get back," she shouted, wrenching herself from Emily's hold, her heart racing between panic and survival instincts. "Sarah, let's just listen," Emily urged, her voice trembling. Before Sarah could respond, Jake barked loudly, sensing the tension. His fierce stance renewed her resolve. "Stay back," she yelled, her voice shaking but fierce. Out of the corner of her eye, she spotted a glimmer of movement. A police car pulling up with sirens blaring in the distance. "Help is coming," she yelled, her voice carrying hope into the dark night. The pursuers exchanged frantic glances, their expressions shifting from determination to panic. "We didn't mean any harm," one pleaded, backing away. But Sarah wasn't willing to listen. She had felt trapped long enough. Jake stood at her side, a powerful protector, his growls echoing fiercely. "You're not going to get what you want here," Sarah shouted, taking one step back toward the safety of the light. Then, all at once, the figures turned and fled, disappearing into the rainy night, leaving Sarah breathless at the unexpected turn of events. The police car screeched to a halt, and officers sprang out, their flashlights illuminating the scene. "What's going on?" one officer shouted, looking between Sarah, Emily, and the shadows that had vanished into darkness. "We're fine, but they..." Sarah gasped, shaking slightly as the adrenaline slowly faded. "They were trying to get in." "Stay right here," the officer instructed, moving toward the alley, but her mind was reeling. Who were they? Sarah muttered, trying to piece the fragments together. "Just breathe," Emily said softly, her eyes wide with concern. "You're safe now." As the realization of her narrow escape sank in, the world shrank to just the two of them, illuminated in the harsh light of the police car. But in the pit of her stomach, she knew this encounter was only the start, whoever that stranger was. They were out there still, waiting. And the storm might have passed, but the turmoil inside her was far from over.